to Eat, Move, Be Happy, Movement Not Miracles. It is Tuesday the 5th of May and today we are going to do all things hips. So we did a bit of an all over session yesterday, so I thought we'd look at our stretching our hips and keeping our hips mobile today. So just a bit of a whitter whilst I wait for a few people to join. Something to remind everybody of or let you know about. Sunday the 10th of May we are doing a lockdown relay challenge with people from Eat, Move, Be Happy, people from Get Moving, people from Kerin's Reese Fitness client list. So a full range of abilities and fitness levels. And the idea is that we all join together, we'll do our activity challenge throughout the day and pass the baton on to the next person. So between us all, we will accumulate as many hours of activity as we can. And whilst this is all done virtually, we're going to keep the baton passing through through the groups, through the Eat, Move, Be Happy group, so that you can all see how everybody's doing, and you're going to send us your photographs, and it's going to be a bit of fun and a bit of a way of connecting together. So check out Eat, Move, Be Happy website and the Facebook group for details on how you can register for your place. Okay, so
You're in front of me.
we're just being interrupted. I maybe need to go into a different room. Okay, shall we get on with hips? So to start off with, we're just going to some of this work will be standing, some of it will be lying. I've got my mat. We're just going to gently wake our hips up. You can do this standing if you like. I'm just going to do it lying today. So laying on the floor with your knees bent, and we are just going to gently pull up one hip towards your chest. So just relax into as close to your chest as you can get your knee, and move and change to the other leg. So we're just encouraging the hip to move through the range of movement, just to wake the hip up before we do a deeper stretch. And as ever, if we're sitting in chairs or on sofas and we have our legs bent at this angle, and we're sitting for long periods of time, your hips stay in the same position. So, and they're designed to move through a full range of motion. So just sitting in one place all of the time is not good for your hips. So keeping them moving, that was my knee cracking, keeping them moving is a really good idea. So if we get up and we move around, that's a good way of starting that movement. But another way to encourage a full range of movement is just to lift your knee up and push it out to the side. Now, if your joints creak and crack, a bit like my knee's just done, as long as there's no pain and the pain doesn't continue afterwards, broadly speaking, that's okay. Change legs. And it should stop creaking and cracking as you move it more, but the crack itself doesn't mean that things are going to fall off or that you're damaging anything. And we go reverse it, so you start off wide and then bring your hip in, and the same the other way. You don't have to hold on. I don't know why I was holding on to the radiator. Okay, so that you're encouraging your hip to move through its full range of movement. Now we're going to do a hip flexor stretch, and we're going to do both versions today. So it requires you to kneel on the floor. So I'm going to use my mat because it can be quite tough on your knees if you're kneeling on a hard floor. So one knee, I'm just trying to work myself so that you can see both feet, which would be useful, both legs. So your hip flexors are the muscles in the front of your hip joint, which allow your hips to flex. The clue's in the name, really. So these are the muscles that are going to stay short when we're sitting, because when we're sitting, that's the angle that you are in. So these are the muscles that bring your knee up towards your belly. And they can get quite tight. They're quite small muscles and we can forget about them, but if your hip flexors are tight, then they can impact on the rest of your hip joint and how they move, but also on the position of your pelvis, and that can have a knock-on impact into your lower back and into your knees. So keeping your hip flexors moving and stretched is a good idea. So to start off with, the first level, so our hips are a little bit more awake now. So what I want you to think about is tilting your pelvis and your hips forward. So we don't want our bum sticking out like that. So first of all, just getting your bottom tucked under, you should feel a deeper stretch down the front of that thigh. Now if your quads are quite tight, so the muscles in the front of your thigh are quite tight, you're going to have to stretch through this for a little while in order to get into your hip flexors, because your quads will resist, as mine do. So tilting your pelvis forwards, which means you're going to be working through your bum muscles should be quite tight in order to work through the pelvis and get the hips coming forwards. So it's an active, as most of them are, it's an active stretch. We're not just flopping into this move. So hips come forward. Keep your hip bones pointing in the same direction. So don't want your hips sticking out to the side so that there's a twist. If you twist round, you'll feel that stretch come away from the front of your hip. So we get the positioning right. And then to increase the stretch, push that bottom forwards more. And keep our upper body upright. So we're going to change sides now, set up in exactly the same way. So hips pointing forwards, we don't want our bottom sticking out like that, so we tilt our pelvis forwards. Now this can be quite a deep stretch. If your hip flexors are quite flexible and your quads are quite well stretched, then you can go straight on to the next version for the deeper stretch. But for me, it's useful to take it in stages because my quads are quite tight. So what we're going to do now is use, in my case, the radiator, but you might want to use a wall or a support, something that's solid, something that's not going to move, so that you can support your knee behind you. Now, the closer your knee is to the wall, the deeper this stretch. So build it up gradually. You're aiming to get as big a stretch as you can, and it's exactly the same setup. So everything that we've just done, hips pointing forwards, tilt your pelvis and work through your bum to push your hips forward, tilt your pelvis through, and you'll feel a much deeper stretch through the front of that thigh. So we just want to hold it and breathe into it. As with any of these stretches, you should feel your muscles stretching. You shouldn't feel any pain in any of your joints. So if you do feel pain in your joint, then stop, reset, and give it another try. But don't push through pain in your joint. Now I can feel that stretch through the front of my thigh, so there is a stretch sensation there, which is not painful, but I'm aware of it. But that's okay. So, and what I'm aiming to do is if you breathe through that, your muscles will eventually realise that, oh, okay, we're stretching now, are we? And they begin to relax, which means you can then push the stretch a little bit further. But it should be a comfortable pain. As my daughter says, a nice pain, a stretchy pain. So remember, we're trying to access the hip flexor here. So as my quads give in, I'm just tilting my pelvis a little bit more. Okay, so we'll come out of this one and we'll turn around for the other leg. It's not very dainty getting into this, is it? Okay, so as upright as possible, hips facing forwards, tilt that pelvis forwards, work through your bum and breathe into that stretch. As I say, the closer your knee is to the support, the more of a bend, and your heel is going to come closer to your bottom, which means you'll get a deeper stretch through the front of your thigh, and you should be able to access those hip flexors a little bit more. Okay, so you get the idea, and you could repeat on the other side. Oh, I can't get up now. You can repeat on the other side, because the second time is always better. Another way of accessing your hip flexors standing, if you cross your feet over, so just trying to get my balance, so cross your feet over, they don't have to be dead together, but you're standing tall, and then you stretch over and do a side bend, so you can feel it in your back and the outside of your hip, and do one side and then do the other, and then swap feet. Nice and balanced, nice and tall. This is a bit of a gentler movement, but it just helps work through the different hip flexors, different regions of the hip flexor area. And then the final one I'm going to show you is working on the outside of your hips now. So if you sit cross-legged, weight evenly spread between both buttocks, so sit on the bottom bones of your bum, not on the fleshy part of your bum. And then if you imagine reaching forwards, but imagine you've got a ball, so we're not just collapsing into it, I want you to think of rounding your back over an imaginary ball in front of you, keeping your knees relaxed and down. And then as a gentle stretch in the outside of your hips, swap the cross of your legs. Sitting with your legs crossed is a much healthier position for your hips. So sitting in chairs, we weren't designed to sit in chairs in that solid position. This position opens up your hips far more. Now if you can sit with your feet together and your knees on the floor, which you can see I can't, then that's also a good way of getting some more movement through your hips. I do the slightly easier version with the legs crossed. But it's not to say that you can't work on the harder version, because if you sit, the idea with this is that you can get your knees at the same level as your hips. So for me to be able to do that, I have to sit on blocks. And I'm trying to show you some movement without necessarily using lots of equipment. But if you have some yoga blocks and you sit up on blocks and then use those to relax your knees out, that's a good way of opening up your hip joints. And then the final version for the outside of your hips, just turn my mat round. So laying on the floor, you can do this one seated. So bring your ankle onto the inside of your thigh, rest that one down and reach through, and get hold of the supporting leg. You can rest your head on the floor, or it's more comfortable for me if I lift my head up, but make sure your head and neck are relaxed, and you'll feel that in the outside of your hip, in this part of the leg where your knee is bent and balanced. Think of pushing that knee away from your chest, so this knee is pushing out. The closer to your chest you bring your knees, the deeper the stretch. So we've done that one sitting in your chair. Again, it doesn't really matter which version you do. Sometimes I find if I do the lying down versions, I can get a slightly deeper stretch than if I do them sitting down. But if you are finding yourself sitting at a table or a desk and you just want to stretch through to get your hips a bit more mobile, there's no problems with doing that sitting in your chair. So mix and match, try different versions and see which one works best for you. Okay, so hopefully your hips will feel a little bit more awake and a little bit more mobile now. Don't forget to check out our website for the Lockdown Relay Challenge on Sunday. The more people we can get, tell your friends, tell your family, it doesn't matter what age, what ability, what fitness level, there's something that everybody can do. You choose your activity challenge. So you do what you can, and hopefully we'll get as many people as possible to do as much activity as possible. So check it out on www.eatmovebehappy.com, and keep moving, keep stretching, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching.